moments of raw speed, we see man's uncanny ability to become one with a machine. The art of using a tool to perfection. The mountain, Pikes Peak, Colorado, 14,100 feet, straight up, 156 turns over unpaved roads. Miss one, and it's straight down. The Challenger, man and his machines. The event is like none other in the world. It's the race to the clouds, the Pikes Peak Hill Climb, man versus mountain. Thanksgiving Day, 1806, Army Lieutenant Zebulon Pike became the first American to view the peak of the majestic mountain that would later bear his name. No man will ever conquer that mountain, he predicted. And indeed, Zebulon Pike never did. But clearly, he underestimated the determination of others. On August 12, 1901, two Denver men not only conquered the mountain, they drove and pushed an automobile to the summit in just over 9 hours. The race to the clouds had begun. In 1916, Colorado businessman Spencer Penrose made it official, organizing a hill climb to promote the newly completed road to the top. The initial event drew 14 entries, including Duesenberg, Cadillac, and Stutz. The favorite? Barney Oldfield. The race, however, was won by an unknown, Ray Lenz, in the tiny Romano Special. His winning time, 20 minutes and 55 seconds. Since then, the hill climb has been run virtually every summer. And the challenge of the mountain has lured some of the greatest drivers in the world. A.J. Foyt, Mario Andretti, and of course, Bobby Unser.
Pikes Peak and the Unser started before I was born. My father raced up here, and he had two brothers, my two uncles. That was Joe Unser and Uncle Louie. And all three of them were racing up here together at the same time. In fact, my father and my two uncles put the first motorcycle and sidecar in history on top of Pikes Peak. And that's before that there was a road built up there. My father always built his own car and ran that. My Uncle Joe switched back and forth, building his own car and driving for other people. And my Uncle Louie, who ended up winning the race 9 times, he usually drove for other people, very seldom for himself.
Well, I look at it this way. I could be wrong about this, but to me, when you're driving a race car or you're doing something like this, you're just in another world. You're in the world all by yourself. And it's a question of whether you can master the car that you're driving or it just takes advantage of you. It's a challenge, I think. I could be wrong about that, but it just does something to you. It has to, because you couldn't be silly enough to do it year after year if it wasn't.
I think that one of the things that makes Pikes Peak a big event, such a national event that it is it's the second oldest race in the United States. All the Indianapolis drivers, all of what we call the championship drivers, the kart drivers, people like that, today came to Pikes Peak. All the NASCAR stock car drivers used to come up here.
Now let's go back 25 years and ride with Bobby Unser as he takes on the mountain in his open-wheel Champ car.
Driver's two different things at Pikes Peak. To a car, it's very hard on a car because you're running from 9,000 feet in elevation at the starting line, as an example, to 14,000, a little bit above that, feet at the finish line. Now that's a big gain in altitude, but the more important part of that is starting at 9,000 feet. Most people have only been 9,000 feet in an airplane. So you figure that you start where most people are already going to have problems. And the car goes through a tremendous change. The air is very thin at high altitude, so you have a hard time cooling things like the transmissions, like the rear ends, like the engines, for sure, the water, the oil. All of these things have problems because of the thin air. There's very little oxygen, very little moisture content in the air, so it doesn't cool very well. And the second big problem is that you're climbing very steep. You're always gaining in altitude, and so it strains the engine. The engine is always lugging and always bogging down hard. The third thing is it's on ground-up granite rock, as you see on the ground here that we have, that it's just pulverized granite, and that makes it very slippery. But it's also a real fun road to drive on. Now, to a driver, it's a big challenge because can you do 160 turns, as an example, and not make mistakes? The idea is to be able to go fast and not make mistakes while you're going fast. And most drivers find that's very hard to do. To run in speeds of, for example, in excess of 100 miles an hour, 130, 135 occasionally on a straightaway, and be able to remember where the corners go. That's the big secret also. Is that if it's easy, it isn't worth having, and if it's easy to do, it really isn't much worth doing. I like to do things that are different. I like challenges. If somebody says something can't be done, that's kind of the way Bob the Answer wants to go.
That run, camera and all, set a new Pikes Peak hill climb record. Coming up next, a new challenger attacks the mountain. To the clouds. Today, we're going to focus on a team of new challengers with new secrets and ride with them as they take on the mountain that Zebulon Pike said would never be conquered. These are production, turbocharged, all-wheel drive Eagle Talons entered by Paul Rossi. Rossi made them winners on the sports car racing circuit, but competition at Pikes Peak is very different.
The real competition in Pikes Peak is the mountain. When most people see a mountain, I think the challenge is to climb it.
The secrets of speed for Pikes Peak are different than anywhere else in the world because the road's different, the mountain's different, the altitude is different, the way you set the car up is different. So it's a matter of mental preparation, mechanical preparation for the car, and having, as odd as it sounds, respect for the mountain.
The mountain is there. It's not going to change. It's going to give you different circumstances all the time, and you can ignore those and fight the mountain on race day to try to make a good run, or you can live with what the mountain gives you, adapt to it as you make your run, and I think that those guys that push too hard to fight the mountain, they end up having problems.
Sure, the rest of the guys are all out there to beat you, but I think the biggest thing is the elements here. If you have everything right and you do everything right and you have a real smooth run, why you'll always come out ahead, and then you have to get to the top before you can win.
The secret of speed at Pikes Peak is to understand our challenges. Our challenges here are the loose surface that we have to hook this car up to. We have to maintain power levels all the way up the hill. We have to maintain a temperature that is reasonable up the hill. We also have to maintain our boost level all the way up to the top of the hill. And while we're maintaining that boost, we must keep that charge cool.
The secret on Pikes Peak is to maintain your momentum and to get into the rhythm of the mountain. The mountain's turns have a certain rhythm to them, and not to try too hard. The harder you try, a lot of times the slower you go.
The biggest thing that you can do, the best you can hope for, is to remember the sequence. And if you can remember the sequence of the turns, right, right, left, right, left, left, right, then what you end up with is a good mental picture of the mountain, and that keeps you from going off.
You you're running against the time, you can't really feel for where the other competitors are. You have to just go for all you feel you can do, go to the limits of you in the car, and hope that that's good enough.
Of course, the Mountain has a few tricks up its sleeve.
The Mountain will bite you because it does strange things to you. There's no air for the car, there's no air for you. The road has 156 turns, 50 of which look alike, and you need to know whether you're on the 50th or the 49th or the 48th of those 50. And so it's mental and physical preparation that really make the difference here.
The altitude, it affects you, I think, bodily, and it affects the car very drastically. I mean, we have probably lose half the horsepower before we get to the top. One mistake can cost you the whole race. It takes just a matter of 1 or 2 seconds, and you've lost the whole thing. So, actually, you've just got to make sure you have a very smooth run. I think that's probably the most important thing.
There's 2 turns. One, the last hairpin before the summit, that it's not a good habit to ever stop and look out the other side of that, or you'll never go into that turn as hot. It just falls off clear back down to timberline, and there's nothing there that would ever stop the car if you ever did go off that turn. It's probably 1,000, 2,000 feet before you'd find a bottom.
But Rossi and his team feel they have the secret to beat the Mountain. A combination of a turbocharged engine and all-wheel drive.
Yeah, 4-wheel drive is the only way to go up on the mountain. You combine 4-wheel drive with a turbo, and now you've got the secret, because with the elevation change, you're going to lose your horsepower. You're on dirt, so the more traction that you can achieve, the faster you're going to go. You need a turbocharger or a lot of horsepower. The turbocharger will create the horsepower and keep it level, but the 4-wheel drive is the real secret, because there's 156 turns. What is this thing really? I've always looked at it as 156 straightaways, drag races. So you can only go through the turn so fast, no matter how good your car is. It's who can get from the end of the turn to the beginning of the next one the quickest that's going to save the most time. And so that 4-wheel drive will accelerate the car. The turbocharger keeps the horsepower there, and that's how you win this race.
No question about it. We, for years, ran naturally aspirated cars here. The first 3 years that I ran the production division, we had naturally aspirated cars. When we went to the turbo cars, it was really a pay raise for us, and kind of the joking way we talk about it is it doesn't matter so much how thin the air is if you bring your own.
Turbocharging at Pike's Peak increases the horsepower in a relatively small engine and allows us to keep the same horsepower levels throughout the entire run. So our goal is to try to keep the horsepower that we have at 9,000 feet, capture as much of that as we can at 12,000 feet. But we have a specially formulated intercooler, which is liquid to air, which keeps the temperature starting out at a minus 19, and we try to keep that under 70 degrees going all the way up the hill. A normally aspirated engine has to rely on the atmospheric pressure to force the charge into the cylinder. If we have a turbocharge, we get a little boost, we get some help. We get to push that charge down into the cylinder. It fires it off, it makes a more dense charge, which pushes the cylinder down just a teeny bit harder and makes a little bit more power. A turbocharged engine of the same dimension as a non-turbocharged engine could be as much as a 50% pay raise in power.
Still, Rossi and the Talons have more to worry about than the Mountain. The competition in both of the production classes is fierce, with strong entries from as far away as Europe and Japan. Next, the race. The first car in line is the production class Eagle Talon of Don Adams. Ahead, the Mountain, 12.42 miles, 156 turns. Let's ride along with Don as he makes his run. The green flag. Section is relatively flat and fast. As we head through Engineers Corner and up toward the ski area, it begins to steepen. 10,900 feet. 11,400 feet. Adams has a fast time going, but the toughest miles are yet to come. A series of switchbacks, then up toward Devil's Playground, 12,780 feet above the tree line. This is the most treacherous part of the course. Each turn looks like the edge of the earth. Section, 13,000 feet. The road starts to flatten out, and the speeds increase to 130 miles per hour as we near the finish. The finish line, 14,100 feet. Adams' time, 13 minutes, 50.46 seconds. The time to beat. But is it fast enough? As the competition makes their runs, teammate John Crawford, halfway point, he's close to Adams' time. But he's not quite fast enough. At the finish, he's 1 second slower than Adams. Others come close, perilously close to beating Adams' time, but none do. Don Adams Talon is the 1990 Pikes Peak Production Class champion. Next, the Open Production Class, where a specially prepared Talon will compete against some very exotic machines. A chance for Rossi's team to score an unprecedented double victory. Driver Dick Dodge Jr., a Colorado native, enjoys a home court advantage.
I live here. This is my hometown, and I've been on this mountain with my dad since I was a little kid back in the 50s. So to me, it's just been a slow process of learning the mountain. I've been racing on the mountain since '78, so I've seen the snow, I've seen the rain, I know how long it takes the road to dry. I know every inch of this mountain.
Dodge's experience pays off as he sets a new class record and takes first place. Rossi's secrets of speed are right on. The Talons enjoy a perfect day, winning both the Pikes Peak Production and Open Production categories. They've beaten the mountain. Still, competition on the mountain continues for the other classes. Next, the open truck category and the traditional big block stock cars. Even with their emphasis on raw horsepower, few of these highly modified machines are able to match the time set by the production turbocharged all-wheel drive Eagle Talons. Open wheel class, single seat, pure racing machines. The favorite, a familiar rival of the mountain. Onser maintains the tradition and takes first place overall. But today, the Mountain gets a bit of revenge. His winning time is well off the record he'd hoped to set.